Today we're talking about green beans and what to do with them. If you live in an apartment, I've grown green beans in a container before. If you have bush beans, they're super easy to grow and can be really productive. Or even a flower box, you can take a flower planter and plant them in there, and then you have a lot of extra beans that you might not know what to do with. And then of course, if you have a regular sized garden, you're going to have a lot of beans. I have canned them in the pressure canner before, and you've got fresh green bean, well, fresh-ish green beans all summer or winter long, which is great, but sometimes I just want a change. And so today we're going to be canning dilly beans, which is where we're going to put the beans into a brine very similar to a pickle. It's super easy and very, very tasty once they are ready to go. Many people get kind of nervous about canning green beans because since they have a low acidity, they would normally need to be canned in the pressure canner. And I know a lot of people have some nervousness and trepidation around that. So especially if you're a beginning canner, or maybe you're someone who cans but you don't like using the pressure canner, this is a great recipe for you. We're going to make a brine for the dilly beans, and because they're going to be in the brine, they will be able to go in the hot water bath rather than going in a pressure canner. So this could be a great way for you to preserve your beans if you're a little bit hesitant about pressure canning, or maybe you just want to change and something different, which I know that's definitely the case for me sometimes. So to make our brine, we're going to just need a couple of ingredients. The brine takes 2.5 cups of water and 2.5 cups of vinegar. I like to use the Heinz vinegar. I'm using apple cider vinegar today. Some people might prefer to use white distilled vinegar, but I just prefer the flavor of the apple cider vinegar in all of the canning that I do. So the main thing is you want to make sure that you find vinegar that has 5% acidity. And then we're also going to add 1/2 cup of canning salt, which looks like this. All right, we're gonna put that in the pot and bring it to a boil. I start the brine first because we want to bring this to a boil and we want the salt to dissolve in the water and vinegar. And so this doesn't have to be stirred constantly. I'm going to stir it occasionally, and that allows me time to be able to work on preparing the beans in the jar. That's why I go ahead and start this first. I did double the batch just because I have a lot of beans to can today and I want to make sure I have enough brine. While that's heating up, we're going to go ahead and prepare our beans. I have a lot of beans that are looking gorgeous today. These came from a bush bean plant. Well, a few plants obviously, because there are quite a few here. But these are Variquart beans, so they're very long and slender, which is perfect for a dilly bean, and they're just great. Steamed, canned, doesn't matter how you fix them, a great flavored bean, but that's what we're going to be using today. So I've already picked them in this hopper, and I'm going to, when I picked, I tried to make sure that I already took the top off and took care of that part. Now I'm going to go ahead and snap the bottom before putting them into the jar. I'm working on getting our jars ready to go before I put the beans in, but my goodness, can we just take a moment and admire this beautiful, beautiful dill? So we've purchased dill before from the grocery store, and a lot of times, you know, it's okay, but nothing beats fresh picked dill out of the garden. It's just gorgeous, and I wish that you could smell it right now because it smells so good. What is going in our jars? We have pint jars here. I'm using the regular mouth. If you have wide mouth, you can use them. Lids are a little bit hard to come by, and wide mouth lids are really expensive right now. So one, my wide mouth jars are full of pickles, and two, I just don't have what I need to kind of do that. So I am going to use regular mouth. Inside, I have 2 cloves of garlic that are peeled and 1 sprig of dill up at the in each jar. And then here's where it varies. I'm using some chili peppers. I'm going to go ahead and put the beans in. So the top I already snapped when I picked them. The bottom I'm going to go ahead and snap off. you can just take your 2 fingers and snap like that. Some people use a knife. We're keeping it simple today. I'm gonna kind of measure and see if it will fit in the jar. I'll snap it off where it doesn't and save the other parts because I'll put those in a jar by themselves or use it to fill in as needed. Snap the end. And there we go. I like to lay it on its side because they lay in here a little bit nicer. You can get more in the jar. Keeps it a little more organized. I'm not washing my beans with water because I know that they are organic. They haven't been sprayed with anything and they're very clean. If I find dirt or something that needs to be washed off, I can. Otherwise, I can usually just brush off a blossom end or a little furry whatever weed thing. So I'm going to keep doing that until the jar is full. And here's an example of a jar that I already filled up. You can see I have lots of beans packed in there. So that is what it looks like. And I'm going to go ahead and finish until all of the beans are in jars. All right, so I have all of the beans from that hopper in jars, and we ended up with 8 total pints, which is fantastic. So now we want to go ahead and put the brine over the top of the beans. And a couple of tools that I'm going to use for that. The first is a stainless steel funnel. This is going to help to make sure that the top of the jar stays clean as the brine goes into the jar. The second tool that is really helpful would be this canning scoop. This is probably one of my favorite canning tools. It picks up the whatever it is that you're working with. So you can use it for different brines, you could use it for jam, you could use it for salsa, whatever it is that you're making. This is a great tool to have. And then it also has a hook on the back, so you can hook it right onto your pot if you need to set it down while you move something around with your jars. Those are a couple of tools that we're going to be using, and right now I'll show you how we go ahead and fill the jars up. I ended up with some bean tops left over from what I had snapped, and I was gonna go ahead and just put those in another jar and can them up the same way. They would just be shorter, but actually I think I'm gonna save those for dinner and enjoy them that way. So we're going to go ahead and scoop up the brine, pour it over your beans. And you want to be able to cover your beans and come up to about right here on your jar so that nothing falls out or spills out as you're processing. Then I'm going to go ahead and move over the strainer or the funnel and fill up another jar. I'll continue with that until I have all the beans covered, and then I will show you the next step. Now that the jars are topped up with the brine, I went ahead and put 8 lids into the saucepan, just covered them with water, and I'm going to bring this to a boil just so that that seal can loosen up and be ready for the jars. While the lids are getting prepared, I'm going to go ahead and get the tops of these ready to go. So I took a damp paper towel and I'm going to clean off that top edge. This is going to help to make sure that you get a really good seal once you put this into the canner. Then I come back with a dry paper towel just to verify that there's nothing left on there. So a couple of things here. It took me a little bit of time to get those into the jar. So my brine actually cooled off and it was no longer piping hot. It's warm but not piping hot. If this had just been boiling and I put it into the jars, I would be preheating my canner to make sure that they don't break when I put them in. So since that was not the case, I'm not worried about breakage. Just keep that in mind if you decide to do that. I am using an electric canner today, and what I love about this is that since it sits on the counter, it does free up some of the stove space for other things. So it can, it has a dial that turns it to boiling. It does have a side spigot, so you can keep it really close to the sink if you need to go ahead and drain out that water before you dump it. And it just has worked really great for me. The other nice thing about this is that it holds more than 7 pints or quarts or half pints, and so I can get a little bit more in this than I can if I were to use the traditional stovetop canner. Just something to keep in mind if you have not seen something like this already. All right, these are done, so I'm gonna go ahead and empty that hot water into the canner. Next up, we're going to use another one of my favorite canning tools. This little guy right here is great for picking up lids. This is a magnet, and so it helps you to pick up those lids without burning your fingers off. I'll place it on the jar, screw on the cap, and then I can just gently place the jar into the canner. Again, if this was hot, I would go ahead and use my jar lifter, but since it is not boiling hot, I'm not going to worry about that. And we're just finger tightening these rings to make sure that they secure the lid so that it will seal after processing. Once all the jars were in, I went ahead and added a little bit more water so that it's covered about 1 inch over the top of the jars. I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on, and then we will bring that to a boil. Once it's boiling, I'm going to let those go ahead and process for 15 minutes, and then I will turn it off and show you our final product. Here we are. I have one batch that already came out, and I'm going to go ahead and take the next batch out of the canner. I hope you found today's video helpful, and if you have never given canning a try it today. Dilly beans is a great place to get started, and once you've let them set for a couple of weeks, you'll be able to use them for snacks, put them on salads, or eat them anytime you want. So I hope today's video was helpful. Remember to click like and subscribe, and I will see you back here next time. Bye everyone.